It's been a long time since I've written anything here, but I'll try my best to stay composed, given these extraordinary circumstances. I was about 15 years old when it all went down, and at the time, all I cared about was playing Pokemon and goofing off. Part of me misses such a time, but I digress. When I was younger, the last thing I expected was for me to get into game hacks and such. My hobby would later become an obsession around the age of 10. I was at a local GameStop when I had stumbled upon an action replay. My mom bought it for me, much to her confusion as to why I was so adamant about it. Afterwards, I immediately went home to use it on my copy of Diamond. I saw no harm in it since I had already beaten the Elite Four, so I figured it would be perfectly fine for some hacking. Almost like a reward for having done everything in the first place. I got more and more into hacking around the age of 14. I had scoured the internet for various codes for getting certain Pokemon, modifiers, items, and such. There was one code that I had found that I became enamored with at the time. A Shiny Eevee code. But this infatuation would never last, because this Eevee code would permanently change my outlook on hacking, whether it's something as simple as using Action Replay or any other device. It was just Saturday afternoon. Nothing really stood out. I was talking with a very close friend of mine on Discord and playing Pokemon, as per usual. His birthday was coming up soon, and I unfortunately couldn't ship over anything to where he lived. My dad understandably wouldn't allow it, and I didn't have any money to buy him anything as simple as a gift card. After some thought, I realized the best thing I could do was get him a special Pokemon for his game, as surface level as that may come off as. His absolute favorite Pokemon was Umbreon, but a normal Umbreon wouldn't do it in my eyes. I needed to get a shiny Umbreon. Thankfully, my friend's birthday was a week away, so that was enough time for me to get started on a shiny hunt. As much as I don't want to talk about other people's issues, I feel like I need to explain a few things about my friend. His home life isn't too glamorous, which was why he felt compelled to stay online as much as he could. His family treated him very insignificantly, demanding so much from him with little expectation. They constantly discouraged him from speaking his mind, being his own person, as if he was much younger than he was. His parents refused to let him go out, which only fueled his frustrations. I lived across the state from him, so trying to visit him was impossible, and even if I could, his parents wouldn't trust a stranger in their house. This is one of the main reasons I wanted to get him such a special Pokemon for his game. I couldn't send him a single thing. It made me feel powerless. I hated it. After shaking off these bitter feelings, I started up my Pokemon Black, the version I typically used. I walked my trainer into the closest Pokemon Center and looked at my Pokemon boxes. Luckily, I had every Eevee evolution to choose from, as well as a Ditto to breed it with. I had taken out my Zoroark and Superior from my party and replaced the empty slots with a Ditto and an Espeon. I then proceeded to trek to Route 3. Once at Route 3, I walked into the daycare center and spoke to the woman. I rapidly pressed the A button because I had gone through this song and dance of text boxes plenty of times over. I then dropped off both the Espeon and the Ditto into the center. I left the building and talked to the man out front. Your Espeon and Ditto are doing just fine. The two of them seem to get along. I thought this was good, and maybe I could get some eggs soon enough. Later on, I returned to the Pokemon Center and dropped off all but one of my Pokemon into the PC so that I could hold as many eggs as possible. I kept my Reshiram, Blackfire in my party and proceeded back onto Route 3. In only a matter of minutes, I already obtained an egg. And now comes the fun part of shiny hunting, having to hatch 1,000,001 eggs until a shiny popped out. How wonderful. I had been playing my game for a couple of hours and with no luck. Unfortunately, my DS's battery had run low, so I had to plug in the charger while I played. I had probably gone through an entire box full of eggs with no results. I figured it was fine though, since I had the whole rest of the week. I continued playing until I grew tired and went to bed. No luck. My mind was racing as it was filled with anxiety. I only had one godforsaken day left. One day! At that rate, it was impossible to get this shiny Eevee. For one thing, my patience had run so thin from having to keep playing all day, which only served to amplify my stress. I sighed exasperatingly and set aside my DS. This was going nowhere fast. I had no choice but to play dirty as I turned on my computer. There was no way I could have done this shiny hunt on my own, not at that point. I went to Google and searched for a Shiny Eevee AR code for Pokemon Black. Surprisingly, I was greeted with a single result, but I spared no thought and immediately clicked it. It was a long code, but I was more than willing to submit it to get the Pokemon for my friend. I saved my game and turned it off, then proceeded to take the cartridge out and put my action replay in. I entered the code and put the cartridge into the slot on the AR. I booted the game up. This could make my next egg a Shiny Eevee, guaranteed. I launched the save file and was already on Route 3. My party was empty except for my Reshiram. When I talked to the man, I took the egg and opened up my party. Bad egg. This left me extremely confused. I've heard of this glitch before and that it would corrupt your game or something along those lines, but I was determined to hatch it in case it might be the Shiny Eevee. If it wasn't, then I'd just shut my game off. End of story. I moved my trainer back and forth for a few minutes before I got a message. What? My screen changed and showed my egg hatching. Congratulations, your egg hatched into an Eevee. I shouted in triumph, for I finally had a shiny Eevee of my own. But my high spirits were then replaced with more confusion. Something was off about it. I wasn't given an option to nickname it. I opened up my party and examined its summary, and it was called EE. I didn't get it, and even now it still leaves me unsure. EE was a level 1 male Eevee with the moves Swift, Sand Attack, Scratch, and Growl. Seemed simple enough to me back then, but looking back, I knew the moves had to be off. But no matter, because all I wanted was to evolve it into an Umbreon and give it to my friend for his birthday. Unfortunately, I was mentally drained. It had gotten pretty late, even for my standards. Not all was lost though, since I had enough time in the morning to evolve Eevee. This was it. This was the day I would evolve EE and gift him over to my friend. Before I started my game up, I logged onto Discord. But I was immediately greeted with a message from the same friend I was giving this Pokemon to. The message filled my heart with dread. I've had enough of how my parents treat me. I'm not a goddamn little kid anymore. I'm never coming back home. I don't care what they say. I'm sorry you had to hear this, but there's a good chance that you may never see me again. Goodbye. I remember it taking me a while to get a grasp on the message. My mind was in pain from how much was going through it. I tried so hard to deny it, thinking that he wouldn't do this. Would he? I struggled to message him back over and over again. I waited for a few hours with no response. Eventually, his status changed to offline. I knew in my heart that it was too late. He fucking did it. I had no idea where he had gone, and there was nothing I could do about it. All I had now was this little Eevee that I was going to give to him. I felt my heart break into shambles. I wanted to cry, but my tears were held back. I couldn't run the risk of my dad walking in on me with tears in my eyes, so as much as it hurt, I resisted. I then attempted to find comfort in the little Eevee named EE that was meant to be for him. I went and grabbed my DS and opened it up, but to my surprise, the game was already up and running. I didn't remember turning it on, but thinking about it now, I was so emotional that I must have forgotten that I turned it on prior. Regardless, I went to train EE in the tall grass and would later move on to train it in the Elite Four. I moved my trainer out and about in the little patches. A wild Blitzel appeared. Go, EE! EE was sent out into battle, but I immediately returned him since he was too weak right now. I then sent out my Reshiram. Blitzel used Tackle. It's not very effective. What will Blackfire do? Fight. Flamethrower. Blackfire used Flamethrower. Wild Blitzel fainted. That was overkill, I know, but I desperately didn't want EE to be knocked out at any moment. This little process continued for about 5 minutes until I was cut off by a very sudden Eevee cry. I was then greeted with an unusual text box. EE wants to battle. When you're stronger, I whispered into my DS. Looking back, I don't know why I even said that. That microphone on this handheld isn't exactly meant for that level of immersion. More importantly, why did the game say this, and why didn't I question it before? Not even I can answer these questions. My thoughts were cut off when another Eevee cry went off, but I was free to move again. A few battles later, I came across the evolution screen. What? EE is evolving! I was elated as I watched the screen, but that elation quickly turned south as I noticed EE was evolving into an Espeon. This wasn't right. I needed it to be an Umbreon. It was meant for him. Begging it to be an Umbreon, I pressed B and turned the game off, figuring since EE had already started evolving into Espeon, he wouldn't be able to evolve into Umbreon anymore. However, when I started my game back up, I didn't even have to select the save file. I was already back where I was when I turned the game off. I saw an overworld sprite of an Eevee suddenly run off from my trainer sprite. That silvery sprite was undeniable. It was EE. EE had run away from me, which left me baffled as to why, but it was clear as day that he left me. My last bit of respite was just gone. I felt clueless, but most of all disheartened. I put down my DS off to the side at the moment, leaving it open. I needed to do something else, anything really, to help me clear my mind. I figured I'd boot up my laptop to watch some videos in some vain attempt at bringing my spirits up. I was not prepared for what my browser notified me with. My news feed presented a local article. Runaway boy in Detroit found dead. I had hoped so badly that it wasn't who I thought it was. I prayed that this wasn't real, but it was all for nothing. To my horror, it was my friend, who had run away from home. He was found dead in a forest with claw marks all over his body. From what I reluctantly remember, it was reported to be something along the lines of a rabid coyote that had found and killed him. I slammed my laptop shut and returned to my DS. I was emotionally broken, absolutely distraught, but more than anything, I felt pain. And yet at the same time, I felt like a fool, and still refused to let myself cry. I foolishly thought I could wait until my dad was asleep, and only then could I let all my emotions out. I tried so hard to move this to the back of my mind and move on as I continued playing on my DS. It was then clear to me that EE meant so much more to me than what I initially realized. I made it my mission. I had to find him. I desperately searched all around Unova, down to every city, Dragon Spiral Tower, and even Victory Road. No matter what location I could think of, I found nothing, but I refused to give up. EE was the only memento I had left of my friend, the meant-to-be birthday present, the one that was going to be the shiny version of his absolute favorite Pokemon. I didn't want all of this to be for nothing in every way possible. I couldn't bear that. But then I remembered the one place I hadn't looked. Lost Lorn Forest. I used my Reshiram to fly to Nimbasa City and ran to Lost Lorn Forest from there like a bat out of hell. As soon as I walked into the forest, I ran into the overworld sprite of what I thought was a shiny Eevee. To my grimace, this was not a shiny Eevee. Not anymore. What I assumed was EE now appeared to have the ears, tail, and jewel of a shiny Espeon, the very same Pokemon it wanted to evolve into from the start. I wanted so badly to be by his side, but before I could move again, I was greeted by a series of message boxes and distorted Eevee and Espeon cries. They sounded loud and rushed, and judging from the dialogue, it was very angry with me. EE only wanted to evolve. EE tried to evolve by itself. EE became stuck in evolution. EE is in pain. EE ran away because he didn't want to be treated lesser than what he was. I felt my heart stop reading that last comment. I've made a horrible mistake. My hands were shaking at this point, my breath growing shorter and shorter. Before I could make a sound, much less press a button, EE ran off, and it wasn't long until I heard the distant cry of a Zoroark. I nearly crushed the B button and ran towards the sound of that shrill cry I heard. I then came across a gruesome scene. EE was on the ground, covered in claw marks, bleeding. A Zoroark stood in front of it, its claws bloodied as well. This bastard had attacked EE. Everything that had happened to my friend was happening all over again, but towards EE. This cruel display of irony made my blood boil. The way I treated him, the way he reacted, and the result. It's happening again! I wanted to scream for it all to stop so badly, but I could feel myself choking from the anxiety. I was at my breaking point. This had to fucking end! The Zoroark readied a final blow against EE, but I ran my trainer in between the two Pokemon and intervened. The wild encounter with the Zoroark had begun. I sent out Blackfire. I was going to kill this Zoroark no matter what, even if the game wouldn't allow it. I didn't care. I wanted to see it rot, and I hoped to God it would. The fight had begun. I had used Blue Flare. You are about to wish you never attacked EE, Zoroark. However, much to my chagrin, Zoroark took nowhere near the amount of damage I thought it would. Upon further inspection, the Zoroark was level 100. I'd never felt so angry in my entire life. The Zoroark used Night Daze, cutting my Reshiram's health down by almost half. What was with this Zoroark? Why was it so powerful? The same tune turns were then repeated. Blackfire using Blue Flare, Zoroark using Night Daze. My Reshiram was almost down and out, and that's when I got another message. EE wants to fight. Along with the yes or no options, at first I was about to instinctively hit no, when I remembered the reason EE ran off in the first place. I selected yes. Reshiram was then instantly switched out with EE, which was a much higher level than I expected. Had he been training himself after he ran off? EE, male Eevee, level 80. I chose to fight, and his moveset was a massive surprise to me. Shadow Ball, Morning Sun, Power Swap, Psychic, and Punishment. Shadow Ball seemed to be the best move to use here since Psychic would have no effect, and Punishment would not be the most useful. I selected Shadow Ball, but Zoroark was faster. Zoroark used Feint Attack. It's super effective. EE nearly fainted. EE used Shadow Ball. It's not very effective. I felt like an idiot for not realizing the fact about Dark being resistant to Ghost. It did little damage. On the next move, I chose Sunny Day. Thankfully, EE got to go first. EE used Sunny Day. EE regained health. Zoroark used Hone Claws. Zoroark's attack rose. The only other attack I could use was Punishment. I pressed A over it, and once again, EE went first to my surprise. EE used Punishment. It's not very effective. The game must have not been paying attention, because it dealt a hell of a lot more damage than Shadow Ball and Reshiram's Blue Flare. I was grateful, but confused, but it wasn't the time to question it. Zoroark's health went down by a fourth. Zoroark used Night Daze. It's super effective. Once again, the attack nearly knocked out EE. I remember this next turn vividly. I couldn't think, I couldn't speak. All I felt was EE's surging anger. It felt like it all went on by itself. EE's sprite started shaking hard before the turn went through. The next few words that appeared on the screen took so much out of me. I'm my own master. He used punishment one last time. The attack sounded much louder than usual, and Zoroark immediately fainted. For the first time throughout that whole fight, I finally took the time to breathe again. We went back to the overworld, and EE was facing me, with the Zoroark on the ground. It wasn't dead, much to my annoyance. EE slowly yet calmly walked up to my trainer. A text box popped up. EE has rejoined your party. The screen then went black. The save file is corrupt. I turned my DS off and back on before deleting my file. Nothing could be done about it at that point. I clicked a new game, and what I saw took me back. There was no opening intro. I was already on the first round of the game. I opened up the menu, seeing my trainer card. All the info from the last file was present here. Wary of what could happen next, I carefully looked at my party. There was only one Pokemon remaining. EE. I opened his summary menu. Evan, level 5, male Eevee. I couldn't stop crying.